Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stassi. Thank you so much for being here today. Happy Christmas Eve, everyone. I can't believe it's Christmas Eve. My God, this year has flown. I'm floored that we only have what is it like 8 days left of this year. I thought today would be a really special episode from last month when we did Builders 101, a guide to building for beginners. I thought it'd be really fun today to do part two of this three-part series. And today we're going to talk about landscaping, and we have the queens of landscaping here, Miss Jubiesims and Cookie Creative. Thank you, ladies, for coming here today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh my God, Jubie, I will never take credit for this series. I'm just happy that you chose me to help you with this series.
Well, you're like my favorite podcast queen ever. So who else am I gonna
Oh my
ask?
God. Thank you. I needed that. Vain, I shall say. Um, but before we dive in, if I sound funny, I am sick. I do have COVID. So I have COVID brain as well. So please bear with me as I will probably ask the dumbest questions. But Jubie, baby girl, where can we find you? And tell us a little about yourself.
Well, my name is Jubie. I build in The Sims, primarily grandiose castles that I don't even know if you can really use. I just like building them. But you can find me on all platforms, just Jubiesims. That's it. I'm pretty easy to find. Once you found me, I'm just there. I'm never gonna leave.
I love that. And also welcome back for the 10th time.
Is it really?
10 times.
Aw, 10th anniversary.
10th anniversary. I know.
Oh my God.
Also, the Builder games are coming around very soon. Anything we want to
They
share about
are.
those?
Yeah, so the Builder Games, we are doing season 5, and season 5 is going to be around the world. So we're taking you to 6 different global destinations. And so it's a 6-week process starting on January 21st. So the applications, they're open until I believe January 6th. And then everybody will have answers as to if they're in or if they're not. We are just doing it same as usual, randomized system. So apply, and then you have a random shot getting in. But you can find all that information in my Instagram as
I
well.
I love that. I cannot wait to see the fifth season of the Builder games. Cookie, welcome back. Also, I have to apologize. I guess I've been saying your name wrong for like 4 years now, and no one kept told me. So I'm so sorry. I've always read it as Cookie, not
No,
Koki.
okay, so you are not the only one by far. And
Okay.
I have a really, really bad time, or like I'm really bad at correcting people. My name is like Elena, and a lot of people call me Alana, but I have let people call me Alana for years without correcting them. It's just something I'm really, really bad at. So if some people say Cookie, I'm like, you know what? It happens. That's I can see why, because it's if you've ever looked up a beach, Coki is actually a beach on the island I live on,
Hmm.
and it's also a frog that makes like a noise that goes Koki. And so Coconut is my dog's full name,
Hmm.
and I thought I was going to call her Coco for short, but for some reason Koki kept coming out of my mouth. So it's my dog's nickname, and that's what Koki Creative. It was actually going to be the name of my business, and I ended up just turning into my username, which then turned into a Sims account. So if you ever want to know the backstory, that's just a lot of backstory there. But yeah, hi.
Hi.
If you call me Cookie, it's fine. I get it all the time. But it is Koki, which I don't know if a lot of people know how to like have ever seen that word. So I don't. Yeah, especially a lot of my followers are not American, or not
Hmm.
like English is not their first language, and yeah, so
Okay.
call me what you want.
I get Stacy all the time. Hey,
Oh, I
Stacy.
can see that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I probably the first time I read it, I think I might have read it as Stacy, and then you said Stassi. I'm like, all right, we're going with Stassi now.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, Kevin's like, it's Koki. And I'm like, oh my God, I would call you Cookie forever. That's so awkward. And you've never, so I wanted to apologize So everyone
Oh,
can
it's
hear
okay.
I'm just an idiot. I'm just
This is a service announcement from Stassi right now.
I'm an idiot. Like I don't know what to tell you guys. But
She'll catch on eventually.
eventually, until it was pointed out to me, and I'll never forget it for
I
as
am
long.
so sorry I didn't say anything. This is more my fault than yours because
It's not. It's 110% my fault. You have no fault of your own. But anyways, Coki.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and where we can find you?
Oh well, my name's Elena and my username's Coki Creative, if you haven't captured that by now. I live in the Caribbean, that's fun, but I'm originally from Michigan, so you'll hear a good Midwestern accent as I talk, but you can find me on pretty much every platform. I just started like Facebook again. So I get about 2 likes per post on that right now. So if you want to check me out on Facebook, that would be fabulous. But yeah, I do a little bit of everything. I try to do everything. Like if I had a bingo card for all the different types of builds and color palettes and all that, I'm trying to check off every single one of those things. So I wouldn't say I have a particular type or style. Sometimes I build houses that I think are kind of ugly, but you know, that's just part of the fun. That's part of building. And on top of that, I like landscaping. So that's a little bit about me.
But you're here at the right place then, as we're here. I could not have a landscaping podcast without bringing you on to talk about fucking landscaping.
Oh,
Anyways, Jubie, take us away, my friend. How do we landscape from beginning to end?
Okay, well, so personally for me, I like to pick. So if you go into, let's say you click on the tree in build mode, that's going to bring you a bunch of different options. My favorite thing to do is I like the cypress tree. I think it's called wetland cypress to be specific. This is like an evergreen pointed tree that I put in every single one of my builds. There's also another plant that I try to pick like 3 things. So my 3 things are the cypress tree, a hydrangea, and low-lying pale yellow flowers, which is very specific, but those are the literal names of what they are in The Sims. So if I were to be landscaping just a basic house, those are my 3 items, and I would throw them down in front of my house, and I would just kind of landscape probably around like the front door. Like you want to frame it a little bit like a picture, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how I would start it, theoretically.
Okay.
So
Okay, so you've started it out. Talk to me of when you start landscaping. Have you already built your house yet? Or like do you have your shell figured out and then you go? Or are you gonna be like, I'm gonna do the landscaping, like I'm gonna build up like my terrain levels.
okay,
And
so
then
that I have opinions on this.
you're literally in the right place.
Okay, well, my opinion on terrain is that you never raise the terrain until you've built the structure. Because essentially, you want your terrain to be flat so that if you're a functional Sims builder, which I am not, but if you are, you would like your build to be functional. And so when you go into the little terrain panel, which has the shovel and the little mound of dirt right beside the tree, there's an option that says flatten to height. And I believe it's the 3rd option in, 3rd or 4th. And you literally just take your little, like you build your house, and then you raise your foundation, and then you take your mouse with the raised terrain height thing, and you just kind of like pretend that you're filling your flooring with terrain, and then you draw all around it, and then it'll flatten it all. And then you get a nice little mound that you can just kind of build on, and it's all flat, and nothing will go soaring into the sky. That kind of confuses people. Yeah, that's how like I would start it, and then I would start doing the like exterior and like deciding how to make it look with flowers, I guess.
Okay. How about Cookie? Anything oh my god, oh my god, Coki. It's gonna take me a minute, guys.
Cookie Coki. Oh my god, so we are the opposite. So that tells you, first of all, whoever's listening, that there is no right way or wrong way to do this. You find something that works for you, because I have tried it that way and I'm like, this doesn't work for my brain. Or maybe I need to keep trying it. But what I do first is I take the plot of land and I kind of get an idea of where I want my hills and ponds to be. I kind of think of it, if I bought a plot of land and that's what I'm working with, how would I want to build a house on top of that? So sometimes I will make that landscaping first and then realize I have to find a way to get people into the house. And all my builds are play tested. So that is
I
a
can't
challenge.
relate to that.
And this is what's great. We all do something a little different. But I'll start from the beginning so I can walk you through a little bit. I will first, sometimes I even take a little sketch pad, but I look at the plot of land and see if it's a long ways, square, or wide. And then I'll kind of figure out what makes the most sense. Like, I click the gallery image first and kind of see where the angle is for the gallery photo, because that is something that's kind of important for me, kind of seeing where the angle is. And then from there, I decide how I want the landscape to flow. Most of the time I do add a pond of some sort. So if you do want to add a pond and a hill, you're going to have high points and low points. And if you're working with anything less than like a 40 by 50 lot, you kind of have to keep in mind spacing. So I just like Jubie here, I do flat spots, but I do it kind of a wrong way. I'll first use the hill feature and I raise it up to kind of where I want, but there are thick lines, like there are 5 lines and there is one thick one and then 4 thin lines. If you flatten it on a thick line, then you will not have problems with stairs. So I like to always flatten on a thick line. So what I mean by that, if you do not understand, is pay attention, make sure your G key, your grid line is on when you're using the terrain tool, so that way you can see like a little bit more in depth of what you're working with. And you can use G to toggle that on and off if you don't like the really aggressive yellow that is put down and you want to see the land. So I like to toggle it on and off to see, does this look ridiculous or not? But anyway, when I am editing, the yellow is on, the grid is on, and I'll flatten it to that thick line. But if I don't just want to have stairs and I want to have a nice slope, I will flatten different spots along, and then I'll use the smooth tool to smooth a path up there so Sims can walk up that. So if you're just starting out, don't do this. Don't go too crazy. It's going to become very, very overwhelming too fast. What I did when I first started landscaping is I started doing simple things. Maybe I just did one pond and everything else was flat. You might see this video that looks really, really cool. There's something you want to try, all these crazy hills. Try one thing at a time and then work your way up to it. And then you can figure out how you like to do your process of flattening or raising, lowering, how you like to do your ponds. Watch other videos, get inspiration from other people, but you're going to have to find a process that works for you, because terrain and landscaping it's an art form that everyone does different and it makes no sense. And when you're doing it, you're like, this looks horrible. And it eventually works out. So that's that in a nutshell, I guess.
I would agree. Okay, so fun fact about me, I have only just started using the smoothing tool.
Oh,
because I actually really don't like it. It freaks me out. It makes everything uneven.
Lumpy.
Exactly, like I'm a flatten to height girly. I just want it to flatten, and then I can add my little debug rocks all around it.
Yeah.
I love my debug rocks. If you do not know how to get debug rocks, you turn your cheats on, and then you do what is it? bb.show live edit objects.
And bb.enable or sorry, I've been using tools not
for
tools,
so
sorry,
long.
Twisted Mexie's better build by for so long. bb.enable, not enable free build, sorry, that is for a locked lot.
Yes.
It's BB Show Live
Yes,
edit
thank you.
objects and BB Show hidden objects.
Hidden objects.
As
Yeah.
I don't use that mod. I still type it in. I know.
I literally got the mod this time last year.
Okay.
Like I had never even used Tool until maybe this time last year.
Oh wow, I
Um,
didn't realize you were so not new, but
I
to Tool.
I didn't know how to use it, and the grid that showed up all the time really freaked me out. And I think that's a
Yeah.
lot like you were saying with the really aggressive yellow.
Yes.
So
I barely move that or use that feature.
see, okay, so maybe this is just me, but as like a geographer, we refer to that as like topography type lines and like looking at it from like a topological view. Like whenever I go, if I were to start a build, sometimes what I'll do is I will build the structure that I want. Like if I'm building a castle, I'm going to build 75% of the castle. And then I'm going to raise it up like I like to, and then I'll raise the terrain around it. But I do everything from a bird's eye view because, like the gallery picture, for me, I want a really clean bird's eye view of a build that I'm doing. Like, I want my build to be surrounded by rocks, surrounded by, if I'm doing a moat, if I'm doing, I don't know, like sometimes I put a hedge maze. You want to be able to like landscape it. And so when you do these types of things, you want to make sure that like all your puzzle pieces fit together. So I don't know, that's why I like those lines, because I can see, I love building on like different levels. And I love seeing that like bright blue, that means I am at the top, like the highest point that you can potentially build at. Like today, for example, I was building a Christmas castle that will come out on Christmas Day. And I literally have it at the point of no return. Like it is so high up on the sky. And there's like around it is a whole bunch of other houses. And I've used that flatten to height tool just to flatten a bunch of like plateaus all around it. And it's not functional, obviously, but it is a lot of fun because you can play around with your height tool and like your foundation levels. So a lot of like, it's kind of like if you think about it when you're building or even landscaping, if you think about everything in threes, you want to have 3 of each things or like 5 of each things or 7, because it's like I'm trying to think of what it's called.
It's literally called the rule of 3.
Yeah.
That's
Sorry, I didn't mean to sound like a dick, but it's literally called the rule of 3.
No, thank you, because I'm blonde and I did not know.
Are we all blonde?
Yes.
But that's like, I don't know, that's, I guess I use the rule of thirds in all of my builds. It's just something I do. So if I'm building something, I put 3 towers. If I'm building with landscaping, I put 3 different landscaping items. Like you just find those corresponding things and connect them. And I find like that's a good rule to have in The Sims if you're building.
Oh, of course. I remember in my first builds, I used to use too many variety of like flowers, and it just, the greens don't line up. The stuff doesn't line up. The colors, it was too much, and the textures was too much. And now I usually use like a handful, and that low lying pale yellow flower or whatever it's called is my go-to. Everyone, you guys all have it. It is base game. Promise you, it is the best.
You can find it in the shrub section. It's very low to the bottom if you have better build by, and it's literally called low-lying pale yellow flowers.
It's so funny. I'm so glad you said that, because it is in every single one of my builds. And some days I go, I'm not going to use that in this build. And then I go, oh, but it's a really good to go around rocks. You can tuck it into spaces. It's
like, I use that one. And then if you ever use terrain paint, which I don't know, this is probably a whole thing in itself, but if you're using terrain paint, for the love of God, terrain paint around your house.
Oh God, yes.
There is something about a house against really bright green that just stresses me out. So it's like,
it feels unfinished.
Right? And it's like, people are afraid to use the terrain paint tool because I get it. You're painting. It's an art form all of a sudden. We're using a mouse. We're using a keyboard. How the hell are we supposed to do this? But you just have to, there's like an airbrush setting, so you can like turn it down to fade it really, really low. Fade it as low as you can, and then just do little teeny tiny strokes all along, like practice going under a fence. And the best part about this is it's dirt. So it doesn't need to look nice.
And you can always use
dirt.
the eraser tool. It's like draw it down, erase it, draw over it again. That's what's great about it. I like to layer my terrain paint, like different dirts. If I'm like, oh yeah, it's because that makes it look more realistic. It's so funny the difference between just lining everything with dirt a little bit can make it just polishes off a build so nicely.
You don't need like a whole foot of dirt. Like if you imagine a physical flower bed, you don't have a ton of dirt. You have like half a foot, right? So I put all my landscaping down and then I terrain paint all around underneath it. And if there's landscaping right up against the house, I don't worry about going up against the house there. Like if you were to delete my build and only have the landscaping, it would look like a mess. But
like drawn.
It would just look very chaotic. But I don't know. I feel like landscaping, when you are doing it, it's definitely something that makes or breaks a build, in my opinion, because if you want it to be realistic, there's obviously dirt beside a house.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I like to use the terrain paint too. Going back to like kind of what we originally talked about. Before I even start the hills, sometimes I use terrain paint to just mark on the ground where I want my hill to go and pond. And then I'll end up like erasing those later. But it's such a great and handy tool to just use. And sometimes I'll draw out on the floor where I kind of want the house to be, like out of sand or some terrain I'm not going to use. So I know to delete it later. But you can use that to draw. I sometimes will even write things on the ground, be like house here or something like that if I know I'm gonna leave and then come back to that build later. But yeah, use your terrain paint for more than just terrain. Sometimes you can use it to carve out like you
can map
flow.
Things.
Yeah, exactly.
You can just like, okay, so if you want to see a terrain paint guru, on TikTok, I'm just gonna throw this out there. There is someone named that one green leaf. She's also a streamer, but she's one of my friends, and she uses terrain paint. She has an art degree, and she uses it to actually like do like she did a Bob Ross painting one time, and that to me as a builder was so inspiring because I'm like, holy crap, you can really do that much with terrain paint. Like it's not just brown stuff that you put places. I'm like, there are so many different options. It's actually one of those things I wish that they gave us more of for each pack. Because I guess one thing we could probably touch on is landscaping with each world, because that's one thing. If you want your build to look seamless with the lot that you're on, it's like take a quick second to go into tab mode. So hit the tab button on your keyboard and fly around the world. Like go look and see what kind of trees are in there, what kind of plants are they using, because all of those items are most likely going to be probably not just debug, but they're going to be base game. So you're probably going to find them. And then same thing before, I pick like 3 of those items. So if I was in Oasis Springs, I'd probably put a cactus in there, probably put an aloe plant, probably put some rocks, and then I'd have my landscaping for Oasis Springs. But you can do that in like every world, and I find it's one of the best things to do.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
See, this is all like I'm literally taking notes here. Things to do when I start to build again. See, that's really interesting. For me, I started using a terrain tool maybe like last year, just to like make shit look more real. I mean, that's just like how you guys were saying it, just being like, oh, dirt's not just brown. There's multiple shades of going like in there, and it kind of just brings your builds to the next level. Now, something that you guys do very, very well is you put flowers on the sides of your walls to make every house has veins and flowers and bushes. I don't care where you live. Arizona, bushes.
I made a winter build the other day and I was like, I'm still gonna put some bushes on the roof.
Yeah. Every
Like
house,
snow's covering it. I don't care.
every house has it. So talk to me about what's the right one and what's your placement method out of curiosity.
Okay, so when I do it, if I love putting bushes and flowers on a house. Like not like on the house. I want them coming out of the roof. So the roof of a build is empty. It is hollow. There is nothing to be seen there. It is boring, unused space, in my opinion. So what I do is if you go and like trying to think what key it is, I think you do page up. You can get to like the top of your build where you can see your roof.
Mm-hmm.
If I always build with my grid on, so I make sure my grid is on the roof line right there. And then I take like hydrangeas, for example, wisteria trees, and I just start shoving them in my roof. And I don't know, I just kind of shove them in there and I just go, okay, you look nice now. Because there's no, if you had bushes coming out of your roof, would there really be a pattern that they would be coming out of? Or would they just be like sprouting? That's how I see it. Like if I'm putting like vines on a house, they're just everywhere. That's just how landscaping is. There is unruly landscaping. I'm not a landscape artist. It just goes everywhere.
So, but like putting it everywhere, like what specific like bushes or flowers or vines do you use?
Okay, so in from the get together pack, there's a couple different wall items that come with it. There's one that I believe it's get together. It's like this like wall item that has a bunch of vines and like there's like flowers and things on it.
Okay.
I do not know what the name of it is, but I know it comes from Get Together. There's also, I want to say it's called Ye Olde University Ivy, which coincidentally,
the one that is the corner.
Yeah, that one. Like it doesn't come from the university pack, I think.
Is it from Cottage Living?
It might be. I think that's it. It's like the poofy one.
Oh yeah.
I believe it's Cottage Living. And it comes from, it's like Cottage Living has all of these like, they're almost like more 3D and less clay-like than the other ones. And those ones, you get like 3 different forms of them. And if you don't know, you can use the bracket keys on your keyboard to like size things up and down. And so when you do that, I usually size things down a lot and then I'll connect the ivy and I'll use those 3 pieces, like the one that looks like an L, I'll put that on the bottom. And then the other one that looks a little more sprawling, I'll put it just above it. And then there's one little teeny tiny piece, and I'll use that piece to like weave all the way up a build. So I don't know, that's how I like vines. I like to, the other fun thing is if you are a geographer / nature nerd like I am, the north side of your build, if you imagine, pick one side of your build to like have the most amount of moss and ivy growing on it. Because realistically, if whatever side of the build doesn't get a ton of daylight, that's going to have moss growing on it because of all the moisture that doesn't get retained. And then if there is a side of your build with a ton of sun, put some more flowers there because obviously they have some more sunlight. So another very specific thing, flowers, I believe it's actually free right now. What pack is it? Romantic Garden?
Yeah, it's free.
Romantic Garden. Yes.
Yeah, they literally have these like beautiful foxglove flowers that like I put those everywhere.
So
those
beautiful.
are beautiful. If you put them on a roof, oh my goodness, that roof is gonna pop off. Like it's one of my favorite
colors. That pack has some of the I love the colors that come with that pack. I haven't used that pack that often because not many people have it, but now that it's free, also if you can grab it right now, the wishing well is worth that pack. So
yeah, the wishing well is so good. I'm actually, my screensaver is a picture of one of my castles I've built and there's a wishing well in it, and I'm like, I like that wishing well. It comes in a lot of different colors and it matches. The thing I like about it most is The Sims does this thing where none of the greens are ever the same.
Never.
I hate it.
Never.
Well, I mean,
It's-
none of the wood textures are the same, so why would we expect any of the
They're
greenery to be
working
the
on
same?
that. The wood textures, ever since
I hope
Horse
so.
Ranch, they're working on it. It's
Yeah.
there. I have faith.
With the doors.
With the doors. But no, with the wishing well, the one thing I like about it is there's almost every swatch of green in that wishing well. So like no matter what your
Yes.
garden, you might get a funky
Yes.
colored wishing well, but the green will match, which is half the battle.
Yes. Because like when we said, like you were mentioning about how picking the flowers and the set of flowers per build, the thing is I always find the sets of greens and then figure out what I have. Like sometimes it's a very lime green, sometimes it's a dark earthy green, but I don't like it. I don't mix those two because it just for some reason makes it look off.
The lime green, there's some bushes that come in bright lime green, and I just can't get behind why they are that bright.
Nope.
And then the grass you give me is so dark. And I completely agree with you because I can visualize it in my head right now, and it's making me angry.
Yes. I did this one huge build, and halfway through it, I realized that I didn't like the way the two greens didn't look good together. And it was in Mount Kamarobi. So it's a very specific style. I end up having to go all the way through deleting all of those lime green plants and replacing them with a different one.
There's
I was trying something new.
So there is one plant that you can go into. It's cats and dogs. It's a hosta. That hosta, also same thing, comes in so many different colors of green. I don't know what the name of it is. I think it's literally just hosta.
Is it hosta plant? Yeah, I just pulled up the Sims so I could know because we were asking actual names. It's hosta plant. So you're right.
Okay.
And I love that plant. It's grows great with the Brindleton Bay.
It's a holy grail plant. That and the I think it's the cat's tail grass or something. It's a base game grass item.
Just the grass.
Yeah. So there's grass, the hosta plant, and those low-lying yellow pale flower things. Those are 3 items that I will usually pair together on builds because I find that the other thing is like heights of different things. If you have a bunch of flowers that are really tall and then put them beside each other, it's going to be really hard to like see those items. Or if you put a bunch of the really low-lying plants together, well, you're not going to see them either. So as long as you have move objects on, so that's bb.move objects, you can actually layer your plants. And I usually will do like the tall one in the middle and then the little hosta right beside it. And then sometimes if I'm using hydrangeas, I'll put one hydrangea and then I'll size another one down and I'll put it right beside it. And then I'll put those, I'm going to say it again, the low-lying pale yellow flowers. If there's one holy grail item, that's it. That is the one.
That's it.
So
I have, do you know the pretty little daisies? The little bush.
Yes.
That's a base game, another staple. And it looks beautiful. Also, it's an eco. So if you have eco lifestyle and you want your lot to have a better eco score, that's a green point 2. So if you're into that, so some of the plants have eco boost. I think most of them do, except for the debug. So if I'm building for like gameplay, I try to avoid the debug plants, even though they're amazing. I just try to use as many real ones as I can because they have actual benefits to gameplay. If you're interested in that.
I once again cannot relate as I am a debug girly.
I get it. No, I love me some debug. Sometimes I use so many debug, and this is something I need to look into. My sim will get a negative moodlet, and I'm not sure if it's because the house is unfinished in some places or if it's because of the debug items. And I think it might be the debug items. My little cousin who has the Sims, just base game, she'll download my build sometimes and she'll say, "Why do my Sims think your houses are ugly?" So after that, I've been trying to use less debug items, but I'm not saying don't use debug items. Use them. They're the most useful thing in the world. Just to keep in mind that if your Sims don't like it, it might be the debug items.
that's like one of the things. So today, for example, when I'm building this massive castle situation, everything is probably 90% done. I'm very happy with it. I'm like, wow, this is so pretty, blah, blah, blah. You know what my sim does? Little Jubie, who I have in there trying to put the Christmas lights up, she says that she is completely dissatisfied with how the build looks. And I was like, well, little Jubie.
Shut the fuck up.
To the pond,
Keep your
to the pond
opinions.
with you.
Yes.
No, you can go hang
You're
out
gonna
in the
go for a
river.
little swim.
So yeah, no, I guess that's like I would totally see that as a problem if your Sims can definitely get negatively affected. But that's when you can throw in those beautiful for free currently flowers from the garden pack.
Exactly. And throw in a couple of decorative items in your garden, and then it's fine. It usually
like
is my
bird
base
bath.
game builds.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the bird bath. That
Which
one's
is in
good.
such a weird spot. The bird bath is like it's in the statues for some
I
reason
can never
under
find it.
clutter.
And it's not under the actual fountains, which I thought,
should be.
I know it should be under the water features. Promise you, there is a base game bird bath, guys. You're going to have to dig for it. Yeah,
colors.
I believe it's in statues. Yes. And that's the nice thing to just throw, like, if we're going to talk about more landscaping tips too, that's a great one. Just throwing in these garden items, like a bird bath. Sometimes we were talking about height. Sometimes I notice that my stuff looks very low, especially if I'm gonna put it on the gallery. I'll check the gallery image and everything will look really low. And that's when I add a bit more trees, a bit more height, and romantic gardens free right now. That comes with so many good garden items. I mean, obviously it's in the name, but it actually comes with those statues and some
you can
places
make like statue gardens.
Yes, and it's so pretty. So if you're looking for more actual good landscaping stuff, it's free right now. So grab it.
You would think we're like sponsored by it, but
I was gonna say, I'm like, guys, I'm not an EA game changer. I am not affiliated by EA.
We're just a
big
fan of free things, okay?
No, I'm happy to start seeing more of those game packs being free because they need to be. They're older now. Like
like my first pet came out. Oh my God, years ago, 2018. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. Because people honestly, when me and Alex ranked that garden pack, like we ranked it like it's not needed. It's you don't need it, and if it's free, you're like, oh, no. it's good. It's to get like
and if you're
free flowers.
If you're into gameplay, it is a good pack for it because of that wishing well. It is fun. Like you can get cursed and die, you lose your job. You can also get married. You can adopt a kid. You can get a ton of money from it. It's just a fun gameplay object. So if you're into that, that's something to also take into account.
And if you also like building castles, there's this cool half dome sculpture thing that is a really good sculpture thing for your castles.
Oh, I'm gonna have to keep that in mind. Sometimes I'm like, what do I put on this roof? That is a good.
Yeah, if you put that on like the top of like an octagonal house, it's like you can get this, and if you put two of them together and then you alt place them, so you can hold down alt. I think it's just you hold down alt and then you place things. Yeah, they can like mesh together really well, and then you have this cool little dome on top of your tower.
So smart. That's something I need to get better at, is castles. So whenever I need inspiration, I actually go to your account if I'm making like something like a castle, because it's something so beyond what I usually build.
I like them.
Yeah. I would build them more if I felt more confident.
See, the funny thing is I'm like, landscaping a teeny tiny house freaks me out. I feel like I over landscape it, and I don't know how. But if you gave me a 64 by 64 lot, I would happily sit there and landscape the shit out of it. Like it's
like this is my thing.
Exactly. So it's kind of like, it's just one of those things that I'm just like, I don't know, I would much rather landscape something bigger because you can almost make a lot more mistakes with it, I find. If you're like a 20 by 15 lot, you can add a tree or two. I feel like that's one thing. If people add a lot of trees, you only really need one or two. because
Yeah.
the trees are really big. And then that takes away from your build. Just because we want our builds to shine.
I think that's actually a good question. How do you not over landscape? Because I think that's a big thing. If
That is a
people
great
don't know
question.
how to do it, they'll over landscape instead of under landscape.
Well, I
And that
think
was
if
my problem when I first started.
yeah. That's like, and that's kind of, it's the same thing. Like I was
Sorry,
the
you
exact
go.
same way. It's, it's, I think if we fall back on that rule of thirds situation, you can never over landscape. However, if you're building a really rundown house, you can over landscape it because it makes more sense to do that. Like sometimes I think about who is living in the house. Do they want flowers? Are they gardeners? Do they even care about their yard? Like you can, there's flooring swatches that you can change the color of grass with. And if I'm building like a super fancy mansion, I'll take the flooring swatches and I will make like alternating colors of yard. So it looks like I have like a cool lawn that's been cut by like a golfing pro or something. And then I'll leave it at that. Like I'll add some shrubs, but I won't add more. Because to me, they're too fancy to have a fancy yard.
Yeah. Always like taking in consideration the sim or the family that would live there and what they would really do. I think about this one build I made years ago and how unfitting it was, the yard was for the sim I had living there. And I think about rebuilding it sometimes because I did over landscape for the sim that lived there. So he was supposed to be a college professor. And realistically, he wouldn't have all the time for this like cute garden. I put a ton of flowers, all this stuff. And so now when I build, I tend to think like what the landscape would be. And sometimes I have to take a step back. Like I don't feel like I'm doing enough or something like that. Because when you're building something and you're staring at the screen for hours, it never does feel like enough. It never really does feel finished. And sometimes you have to stop before you get too far. It's like, you know, when someone invites you out and they are late. And so you keep doing your makeup, keep doing your hair, you keep changing your outfit until you don't realize how ridiculous you look because you're just overdoing it. Because you're just like, I guess maybe I'll add some sparkles to my eyes. I don't know. They're taking another 10 minutes. That's what I do with my builds. And sometimes I have to go, oh, I'll start taking things away at some point when I realize it's a little over done. Or if you're starting to feel like it might start to feel like it's overdone, take a step back, like go do something else for a little bit and then look at it again and then be like, oh wait, this does look good. Or maybe I should take away a couple of these things. Maybe I can leave a little open space in the yard for whoever downloads this. Maybe they want to add something of their own right there, like a slip and slide. I don't know.
That's kind of what I think about. Because if you do a house and there's a dog, I imagine that I want the dog to have a yard. And so I will, when I landscape, one of my favorite things to do is sometimes I add a fence all around the perimeter of my builds. And I like to decorate the four corners. So I just kind of choose like a little portion of the corner to add a tree and a bird fountain and low-lying pale yellow flower, a hydrangea.
Obviously.
Sponsored by this podcast.
Yes. To have a shirt that says it.
Yeah.
It's Christmas Eve. Take a shot every time that you hear us say that.
Yes.
So, I mean,
I have her up right now.
It's the best
That's
one.
commitment. You girls came to play. I appreciate that.
I was literally earlier staring at BuildBuy going, what am I going to tell people about? Because I do this all, when you use terrain all the time, I think it's similar to what you were saying earlier. Don't do this if you're brand new to The Sims. Like you just opened the game. And if you are feeling feisty and you do want to try it out, I implore you to go get a 64 by 64 or 50 by 50 lot, demolish the build that is on it, and just go ham. Just play around with it, make messes, like literally go and do abstract art with this tool.
Yes.
And then it just gets you more comfortable with it. And then you kind of understand it a little more. And then that way, when you go to use it later on, you can be like, oh, wait, I remember that if I do this, like the flatten height one, I can make it flatten, or if I smooth it out, my Sims can walk up it. Or when I'm making a river, one of the biggest complaints I see on comments is if you just like you lower the terrain and then everything becomes really jagged. If you do flatten to height on the lower terrain, it'll actually flatten out your pond. So then when you go to add stuff around your pond, it's not going to fly up in the air.
Yep.
So it helps things not like clip into the air, and they actually like clip to the land. But yeah, that's like one of the things I do when I'm adding rivers and lakes and ponds. But that's how I started with terrain, is just landscaping art, essentially.
I mean, I think this
Yes.
is a good segue. Let's talk about ponds. We haven't talked about ponds yet. We haven't talked about ponds. That's like one of the last parts of terrain is literal ponds. Because that was,
I mean, not new, but like it feels new still.
Yeah, because it was added in cottage living, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which 3 years ago
which is crazy. Yeah. Two. Oh my God, I don't know.
I think it's
2022
2 or 3.
or 2021.
It's either 2020.
Yeah.
It's either 2020 or 2021.
It's 2021 because it was the year that I made Little Henford, and that was
okay.
I remember that build.
You're like, I know
in
this.
My brain.
Yeah.
Yes, it lives with you.
Okay, so is that when? Wait a minute. So we got ponds in 2021. I remember you used to have to use pools.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
pools.
That's how we would make water.
Because I have old builds that have pools as ponds.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
I would use the
debug
debug ponds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and the rocks around the pool. There was this one that I made right before cottage living came out, and I wish I would have waited because I used a mix of like the debug pond, which is cool because you can go fishing in it really easily. But then I did the pool thing, and it was a workaround that builders did. But I'm so glad that we don't have to do that anymore.
I have a feeling I have like a whole build. I have a very large build that is just made of pools. And I'm thinking about that now. But I feel like
the things we had to do.
But like I think because we also got the pond, the coloring. You can change the color of your pond.
Yes.
Like you can make your pond, because you used to be able just to do it with a pool. Like you can make a green pool or a red pool. But now you can make it like pond scum, I think is one of them.
Yes.
And then you can also do, I don't know what it is, like clover covered pond, which is my personal favorite.
Mossy water.
Yeah, the mossy water.
Yes. I love that. My favorite, and I know this isn't very pond looking, but if you want a very sparkling clear, there's one that comes with Get Together. It's called Swimming in Sparkles. That is like the color of the water. And if you want something that looks like pristine, like let's say you're making a magical build and you don't want it to be mossy, although I love that look. The Swimming in Sparkles, usually used for pools, looks gorgeous in ponds, and it makes it a little bit more clear. So if you want to, I always will flatten the bottom of my pond, like we had mentioned earlier. It just cleans everything up. I usually, before I start landscaping, actually will clean up most of the terrain with the flatten feature, smooth things out, and then I'll go in with pond. I will add stuff to the bottom of the pond, sometimes like some grass or anything like that. And if you smooth it down at the bottom, make it nice and flat, it's very easy. And then when you use that Swimming in Sparkles on top, you can see down into the water and it will look really cool. So most of the time I'll, depending on the build, I mean, which one I use, I don't know.
I'm taking notes right now because I've never thought to do this. I usually just put the pond scum or anything on top of it because I don't know what to do with the water.
Yes, and those are one of those things that when I first used the pond tool, the hardest part was the edges. It never looked realistic. And I know that we both do the rock thing. So that's my favorite method. And how I do it is I go down to the basement after I had done my pond, and I flatten the bottom, go down to the basement, make sure your grid line is on, because then you can place stuff in the basement without having to draw a basement down there. Sometimes you do have to. So if you're having issues and you're trying to put a rock in the basement, and there is no basement. Anyway, sometimes you do have to make a basement. Most of the time you don't. Let me keep continuing. So you go down to the basement, you add your pond rocks. And to do this, it takes patience. And there might be a faster way to do it, but I use tool mod most of the time to move my rocks around, but you do not have to have tool mod to do this. This is not like a necessary thing. The reason why I like to put it in the basement is because if you have a bigger rock that takes up X amount of tiles, your sim can't walk around it if it is on the base level that's on. So if you put it in the basement, your sims can walk around it all day. They can walk right through the rocks. Doesn't matter. So I always put my big rocks in the basement so there's no gameplay issues. But then you can lift with the 9 key your rocks to exactly where you want it along the edge. And I use a variety of rocks. I try not to use the same exact rocks every single time, but there's some really, really good base game ones that are kind of like my go-to, like my default if I'm just building something I don't want to think about. And the name of those rocks are cliff rocks.
Oh.
These are what you can find in debug. So
yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking. Are those the ones that are like it's exactly it's that beige one, and you can get one that has
long,
the green. Yeah. So when I do those ones,
the green on top, which is
like if you were to place those, I place them like I'm outlining something. And then same thing, I use tool mod to like I used to never use tool mod, and then I realized one day, oh my god, I can just lower things so much easier. So that's the only reason why I got it. But essentially I used to do the same thing. I would flatten the bottom of my pond, and then I would put the rock on the bottom of the pond, but edge it as close as I could to the side. And then I would raise it up with the 9 key and hope to God that it would line up the exact same. I did it all last year.
Oh my God.
I'm like, I was afraid of tool mod. I didn't want to get it. If you do feel like up to the challenge of building, I do recommend you get it if you're a builder, because it does change. You can just do so much. Like, it's so wild.
Yes. And you can speed things up. So
yeah,
like my favorite thing to do when doing the ponds, or so if I'm putting rocks down and I know I want rocks all over the property, I will, if you click on it, highlight it green, toggle active objects, and then hold down shift and alt, I believe, or it's shift and control. I am so sorry. And then click on that item. It immediately duplicates that. And then if you want to move it just ever so slightly with it toggled on, you click slightly away or whatever direction you want that rock to move. And then you can change the size of that rock to any degree instead of using the bracket keys that will like size it up to monstrous amounts every time you click it once. You can go like, I just want it just 0.5 bigger, just ever so slightly bigger. So you can actually, it feels like I'm getting more items, like I'm getting more rocks out of just the one rock by being able to resize it super precisely or like rotate it with the tool mod. It, like I said about when you're first starting to do landscaping, do one thing at a time. Tool mod, do one thing at a time. It's very overwhelming at first, but then when you get the hang of it, it's like, oh wait, I get it. I can do this.
Yeah, tool mod is like, it's one of the things that I only ever wanted it to elevate things. So elevating rocks, elevating trees. I wanted my landscape to fit into my hills a little bit more that I was making. But then shortly after that, I was like, oh, wait, I could actually use this to like make things functional, but still sit nicer. And I think it's the same thing. Like if you lower a rock so far down with tool mod, Sims just walk over it. Like you don't need a basement. They just kind of walk past it. I guess tool mod's one of those things that it actually made me, I think, a better landscaper, because I felt like I could approach landscaping without the fear of rocks flying into the middle of the air, and then having an angered fit that I couldn't get my plants to sit beside the pond.
Oh yes, that is not, because if you're ever having that issue where you're trying to put bushes or rocks, I get people ask me like, how is it not floating in the air? If I notice something is floating, I'll just lower that baby back down into the ground. Not an issue at all.
See, and if I think the fun thing about me as a builder, if you take apart my builds, you're going to find so many things that are floating, and I don't care. If it's landscaping, it's floating. If it's landscaping and like that's the one. Okay, so another thing about the pale flower things I love, you can put those on the ground, and then after that, you can raise something slightly, and those flowers will actually cover the base of it because of how they pop up, and you can like raise your flowers up a teeny bit with the 9 key, and then you'll just have this beautiful, nice bedding of lush green below it, but nobody will know if you remove it. Everything is flying. So
that makes me feel so much better, actually, because sometimes I'm like, oh my God, if people actually picked apart these builds, sometimes like I don't even know how I put together half of the things I did. I just sort of kept, layering things on top. Like there's a method, but the method is chaos.
Well, and that's the thing is people will tell me, Jubie, I like took apart your build because I'm trying to learn how to be a better builder. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. What did you find?
Did you learn anything? I don't know.
Like, I don't know what I'm teaching you when you take apart my builds because I build them from such a point of chaos. That's like, I don't know. I guess the rule of thirds and those flowers are my only real things I know about landscaping in Sims because it's the guide that I keep from myself going way too wild.
And if we're talking about, I feel like this podcast should now be called the Low-Lying Pale Yellow Flowers podcast.
Yeah, 100%. Yes. It's no longer the landscaping. It's just that flower.
No. Because I need to tell you one of my favorite things about that particular flower, whether it is going up or down, it can kind of, I don't know, slice into the floor or to the ground, and you can stack it. I love stacking them because sometimes I don't want to use rocks for a certain area, and that's when I just layer the low-lying pale yellow. And then if the other bushes you put on top, if they're flying, you don't even notice because it's sitting on top of the layers of, so
Stassi's never going to invite us back because we don't shut up about this flower.
Yes. I'm a huge fan.
I can't, like, I feel like I can picture it, and I've seen it on your screen, but I'm like, I maybe have used it once.
You're missing the hype.
Yeah, I'm clearly, you guys are here. I'm like here. Like
if you want to be a good builder, if you want to be a good landscaper, that's all you need to know. The low-lying pale yellow flowers.
I have like at least 200 of them in every one of my builds.
Yes.
If you ever want to look at one of my builds and just find one object, it's 200 at least. And then, the other fun thing, you can do this with all landscaping. This is not just about this flower. I will retain it a tiny bit. So you can take candles. So if you imagine that we don't live in a universe where you put a candle underneath something, the whole world will burn. You can take a candle and put it below your flowers outside your house, and that will actually illuminate the area. So rather than just using like, I don't know, I guess like just garden lighting with little lampposts, I don't like putting lamps in front of my flowers. I find them ugly and they take up space and I don't want them. So I take candles and I put them under everything.
I need to do that more.
It's the best hack that I can come up with because I don't like adding too many lights to the outside of my builds. But I like knowing that at nighttime when you add things like fireflies, because you can add those in the pond settings. You can add like the ducks and things. I put candles at the bottom of my ponds. And they added an update that you can put candles on top of your ponds. So just put candles everywhere and then put that low-lying flower on top of them and then everything will light up beautifully.
Yes. Then you'll be the best builder.
Exactly. Yes. This is life hacks.
It sure is. I always put the those little pool lights, not always, but the pool ground lights, so that way I hide those in certain areas. I always will check my builds in all times of day because sometimes a build will just look better at night because of the lighting. And yeah just depends.
That's like, okay, so my only qualm I have with those lights is that they're so bright that they remind me of overhead lighting, which you can't see right now to the people listening, but I have no overhead lighting in my room currently because who wants that? So it's like one of those things that when I'm using, that's why I like using candles, because there's a bit of ambiance that comes from them.
Mm-hmm. Like a yellowish tint.
Yeah, it warms things up a tiny bit in the build, I find.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm having issues with like a certain light that's looking too white, I'll go into like the color settings and change it to a yellow light. So that way it's a bit softer, because I don't like when my rooms are like, very harsh. And the Sims 4's shadows, I don't they're still working on that, because sometimes you'll think an item, they're like two different swatches next to each other, but really the lighting is just messing up
Mm-hmm.
the way the swatch is coming out. You guys know what I'm talking about. Cabinets are like the worst.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
It's that damn corner cabinet. It never is the
I know.
correct color.
Never.
No. Sometimes I'm like, how did I put the wrong swatch? And I'll like change it. I'm like, oh no, it's just the game.
It's just
Yeah.
the lighting. It's just the terrible lighting.
Yes.
Hate it.
Oh my gosh. Well, do you ladies have any more tidbits that you want to share about landscaping?
Oh, I actually have a funny thing.
Yeah.
One of the things that kind of unlocked landscaping for me, especially like flattening off spots, was playing Animal Crossing and how that works. And I don't know if either of you have played Animal Crossing, but
Mhm.
it's the landscaping there is extremely simple. You have 3 heights that you can get up to, and playing around with creating that second and third height, I realized I used to try to make everything lumpy and it just wasn't looking good. And I realized because of that, flattening to height just completely changed the game. And because Animal Crossing is so simple compared to The Sims, breaking things down in that simplicity, I was able to like work from there and make it much more detailed with The Sims. But if you play Animal Crossing, you'll know this, and think about that when you're like trying to come up with a build. Be like, oh, how would I do that on Animal Crossing? So yeah, just a fun tidbit.
I like that tidbit because it is really simple.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, this flower can only go in this area. This landscaping can only go in this area. And it kind of makes it a little more simple and like step by step, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
My last thing I really have is sounds kind of weird, but everything that we've talked about is super subjective as well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I always go by the opinion of, there's no such thing as a bad build. There is no such thing as a bad builder. Everyone starts somewhere. And I was looking at my old builds the other day, and they were something. And I wouldn't sit here and I would not say they are bad. I would say they were intricate in their own way. But that's one thing. Like, if you really want to use 10 different flowers, go for it. There's literally no one stopping you. It's pixels. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
game.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there are people out there that are like, teach me exactly how you landscape, because people want to get better at things. Like, it's a natural human instinct to want to be better at doing something. So you can take, like, with a grain of salt, everything that we've shared, because I think it's all really good advice. That's just, just do the basics and stare at your house if you have a house or you're not in an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you can stare at an apartment too now because we have those. But you can stare and like try and recreate your own lawn. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what does the front of your house look like? And like, don't just put a bush down. Put a bush down and then put some plants below it, and then put some rocks around it, and then put some terrain paint, and do it step by step, like it's labeled. Like, put the tree, put the bush, put the flower, put the rocks. There's 4 things that you can put on a tiny 20 by 15 lot, and you've probably filled up the lot by this point. But at the end of the day, you have a garden, and that's a step further than you were before.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's kind of where I would just say my last parting words with it is just do what's going to make you happiest. And if that's putting down 25 different flowers, then that is putting down 25 different flowers.
As long as one of them is your special flower.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Low-lying
So
pale yellow flowers.
exactly. Because if you're not using that, then you're not building it right.
Exactly.
That's the only rule.
Yeah, that's the one qualm.
That does kind of remind me of when I was getting into landscaping for the first time. I started to really pay attention as I was just driving around in the car, being a passenger in the car. I was looking at people's houses and how each person would just landscape. And I noticed like when someone had a little garden, sometimes they would line it up with rocks and like right in the front of their house, and they would have different bushes. And I noticed maybe sometimes they didn't have a ton of flowers in there, but instead like three lined up perfectly in a row. I just started paying attention more because you don't even have to live in a very populated area or anything like that to just see someone else's house for the first time. Because I mean, I've lived in an apartment for years, but I drive the grocery store and would be like, oh, wow, I really, really like what they did with their front yard. And just taking note of that and then taking it to the game, you can directly make that same thing you saw earlier or work from it. Like sometimes be like, oh, I like how it had a little circle around that one tree with rocks. Maybe I'll make 4 of those and make it even more crazy. Because that's what's great about The Sims. You get an idea from real life and then you can do whatever you want with it. So yeah.
I think
I
that
like
is,
that.
I think that's literally the best place to cap off this episode. Thank you ladies so much for coming here and sharing your wisdom of landscaping. Like it's a really intimidating part of building. And especially if you're new and you're on Simstagram, that is all you see is every build is landscaped to the T. And you may feel like inside that you're just not good enough of a builder and maybe not know the skills or maybe just you don't know, right? But it's really nice for you guys to come here and share your wisdom with us so we can us mere mortals can now learn the flowers of placements and the rocks and where we need to go and like ponds or just essentially even just like balancing. Like I have a hard time if I'm like trying to do like I don't know like tiny little mountains. I'm like,
Mhm.
this looks really silly. This looks silly. It's a small ass house, or it's a house on a giant hill. Like I'm like, this looks really silly. I didn't do this right, but it takes time. It takes a lot of time.
It takes years.
It takes years.
Yeah, it
100%.
does. I've been playing since 2000, so I feel like yeah, hopefully I can.
23
Yeah.
years, but who's counting? Almost 24.
Oh my God.
I know. Oh, I know. So as we wrap up, it's Christmas Eve. Do you guys have any holiday wishes for anybody listening?
Oh,
Yeah, I
you
would
go
say
first.
I would just say I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday, and I hope that it is everything you want to make it be, whether that is hanging out on your couch watching a scary movie and drinking some wine, which is where you will find me tomorrow, or having a really big family dinner, just hanging out with the people you love or hanging out by yourself and enjoying these extra days off that we humans clearly need. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Koki, how about you?
Um, just want to say happy holidays to everyone. And even if you don't celebrate anything, I just hope you have a great rest of the year. Uh, and thank you, like just everyone who's like supported me throughout these years. Like I'm coming up in 2024. It's gonna be 5 years. I've been doing like Sims social media, and it has been very beneficial in my life as like a wellness and like mental health thing. Sure, it's caused some stress, but I just want to thank everyone for like humoring me, I guess, all these years. Like, and also obviously happy holidays to the people that are important in my own personal life, like my husband, my dog, and my parents and stuff, my brother. But I just hope everyone, it's been a difficult year for a lot of people. And I hope that we all can at least take some time to take care of ourselves and be grateful for the things that we have and the people we have.
Well, I think that was a really, really nice message. Any New Year's resolutions that you want to share with us, either of you?
I want to publish my book.
Yes.
Too.
And I would love to interview about that.
Yes,
Yes.
that is my goal this year.
Well, my goal is
Or
to
next
still
year.
interview you in where we do a yearly interview. At that point,
Oh yeah. So
I best see a manuscript in my hands so I can at least
mhm.
read the first
It's
100 pages.
that will be my driving force to get it done,
Okay.
is knowing that the interview is coming and I got to get it done by then. So August
It's
has to be done.
August. Yeah. It's 100%. So we'll film it in June. Classic me. It'll come
Okay,
out in
so
like it'll come out.
I can do that.
We can, you know what? No pressure. We'll film in August. How's that sound? It gives you like
Okay. Unless if I get it done earlier, but
unless you get it done earlier. Absolutely.
mhm.
Jubie, how about you?
Um, these are just little teeny things that I'm just working on. Like I want to get through. I learned recently that I'm very, very close to graduating. So a really big goal for me, I've been in post-secondary for a very long time, would just be to try and graduate before 2025. That's my goal. If I don't get there, it's not the end of the world, but that's like my main goal. But if not, I'm going on a couple really cool trips this year, and I'm pretty excited for those. So I guess I get stressed out for trips, so I'm gonna try and not stress out. That's my New Year's resolution, is I'm going to go enjoy myself and not be stressed out the whole time. Yeah, those are like my two little teeny things.
I love that. Very, very nice. Well, we're manifesting. That's what this channel is now for. We're manifesting positivity, and these
Hmm.
things are going to happen. Well, thank you, ladies, for coming here today and sharing your wisdom of landscaping. Jubie, since this is obviously your, thank you again for coming to me with this series. We do have one more episode in this 3-episode series where the next episode is we are going to be talking about castles. We can't have a building podcast with Jubie without ending it with castles. You just can't.
Absolutely.
You just can't. But Jubie, where can we find you?
You can find me on all the socials under Jubiesims. And then for the builder games, I believe it's TS4 Builder Games, all one word, on Twitter and Instagram. You can find us. Yeah, so that's coming out in January. And then other Jubiesims shenanigans are a continued basis for the whole year. You can just follow me and figure it out.
Wise words. Coki, where can we find you?
Uh, Instagram, it's Coki.creative. Everywhere else, including the gallery, it's just Coki Creative. Someone took Coki Creative on Instagram. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Post a little bit of everything, even casts and gameplay recently. So
I'm like in the cast, by the way.
yeah, me too.
Right? It's just like a fun break from like
It
stress.
is. Yes,
Right.
and it's much faster than building like something for 8 hours.
100%.
Yeah.
I can have a beautiful like a beautiful sim in like 30 minutes. Half an hour
Yes.
in, I was just in a collab with Tattooed Simmer. Like 4.5 hours in, I'm like, okay, I finally have finished this giant rectangle.
Oh,
That's it. It's just a giant
yes.
rectangle.
Uh-huh.
with
There's nothing worse than being like, how many hours am I? Oh my God, and I still have the whole interior. Okay.
oh my God. I know I'm like, there's no upstairs. It's a 3-story build, but we only play with the main level guys. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fine. No one cares. No one cares. But ladies, thank you again
Yeah.
so much for coming here today. Happy holidays, everybody. Please stay tuned for a special Christmas episode tomorrow that will be out. And everybody, I hope you have a safe and happy holidays, and I will chat with you ladies very soon. Bye.
Bye.